It didn't start with a movement. It started with one man sitting outside a Walmart in pain. No socks, no boots, no hope. Then someone stopped, not with a speech about getting a job, but a simple act of grace. Because sometimes the moment that changes everything starts when someone is simply willing to stop. Tonight you'll meet the couple who stopped and see what happened because they did. Don't go away. Joining us tonight, live from their mobile outreach unit named The Boot Lady in Erie, Pennsylvania, are Tad and Kit Jakes, founders of Harvest 912. What started as a single moment at a stoplight has grown into a mission dedicated to meeting people right where they are, providing boots, foot care, and basic necessities to those who need it most. In a way, restoring dignity, one person at a time. Tad, Kit, thank you so much, both of you, for being with us tonight. And I want to start right at the beginning. Tell us where the name Harvest 912 came from, because as I understand it, it's central to the story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us on. We really appreciate it. And yeah, there's a story.
Actually, it all started in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. We were attending a very small church, and everybody was kind of edgy with the lockdowns and the mask. And so our pastor just said, you know, what you got to do is get out of your comfort zone, go out and help people. And during the pandemic, going out and help people was not really, I thought, was going to do much for me. But
yeah, we were sort of like, well, how's that going to happen? But
so we had a close friend of mine that was in the hospital, and he was going to get out of the hospital. He'd been in there for 6 weeks, quite a long ways. And so we decided we were going to go to Sam's Club and get some steaks, actually, and have a nice barbecue for him when he got out of the hospital. And on our way there, we took an off-ramp that's what you have to take to get to Sam's. And there was a gentleman flying. We call it flying. He had a sign on the side of the road saying he was homeless and he wanted some help.
And I've always been a super soft touch. So I immediately start looking in my pockets for change. I don't have any change. Tad doesn't have any change. And Tad is former law enforcement, so he's a little bit more skeptical than I am to start with. And he said, you know what, honey, it's probably a scam anyway. So there happened to be, the off-ramp was 2 turning lanes, and we had stopped at the stoplight briefly. Light changed. We started to pull away, and I looked over and I said, Tad, he only has one shoe and he's limping. And he said,
nice touch, brother.
He did. And I hit him. But after that, I said, hey, you know, we're going to buy steak at Sam's Club. Could we just buy the man some shoes and bring them back? And Tad said, well, of course we can.
Absolutely.
You know? And so we're driving to Sam's, and now we're getting kind of excited. And we're like, oh, we can get him a fleece and some snacks, and this will be great. So we get to Sam's, and we're now standing in front of the shoe section and, you know, thinking, well, this was a great idea, but what size are we supposed to get? We don't know anything about this guy. We saw him literally from, 50 feet away for 2 seconds. And I don't know anything about shoes other than what I got on my feet. So I said, I don't know, honey, maybe an 11. That sounds like a normal size to me. And all of a sudden he looked at me and said, you're not going to believe this.
It was really strange. I was just looking at those boots, and for the life of me, I have no idea what this guy wears. And it was very distinct, and it's never happened to me in my entire life. It was a voice that was very clear, and it said 9.5.
To the point where he looked over his shoulder because he thought somebody was behind him.
Wow.
So it was actually kind of spooky. So we just grabbed a 9, and we just went with it. Didn't think twice about it. Grabbed a 9.5 boot and filled it with some socks and some snacks. And we got a few other things for him, I believe.
Yeah, we got a fleece, and now we're excited. We put everything in the shoe box, and we're like, boy, I hope he's still back at the intersection. He better be. Right. So we drive back to the intersection, And sure enough, he was there, but there was a long line of traffic. So Tad dropped me off and he was going to go up the road and turn around and come back. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey man, we noticed that you needed some shoes. So we brought you some." And he looked down at the box and he looked at me, and as God is my witness, he winked at me and said, "That's the right size. God bless you." And that's all he said to me.
Wow.
And he took the box and sat down and started putting his boots on. And
it was like it was a test.
it was like we had passed a test.
Wow.
So as I barely avoided traffic, as I picked my jaw up off the ground and got back to Ted, we just had this incredible, overwhelming sense of joy. We had neither one of us, I think, had ever felt anything like
experienced anything like that. And we drove home and we just couldn't stop talking about it. And we called our pastor, and told him what was going. We were just thrilled. And so the next day, I was at my office, and I called Kit and said, "You're not going to believe what I just did." And so I bought 100 pairs of shoes, and she was working on a name for our outreach and started the paperwork, and we filed 501 and decided this is our purpose.
Yeah. So the 912 comes from the 9.5.
Yeah.
Is the shoe size.
Wow.
And since we've started this outreach, 9.5 is a very rare size, especially for men. We don't see that many. No. We actually have a bell on our bus, and if somebody has a 9.5, they ring the bell when they get off.
It's the angel size.
Yeah.
So we give it. So this year we had 500 and I can't remember 500 and some pairs of boots that we gave out. Probably about less than 10 of them were 9.5s. So it's a very odd size. So that's what the 912 comes from that. And harvest is from a passage in Corinthians that talks about scattering your gifts to the poor and harvesting righteousness. So that's where the harvest part comes from.
What a blessing. What a blessing. I am just what a moving and wonderful story. How amazing is the God we serve. Here it is. You don't even know. You go to the store with the right heart, with the right mind, just full of God's Spirit that you had loving you to say, let's buy this guy some shoes. And you don't know the size. And then here it is, you hear the voice, it just says 9.5. And so much so, Tad, you turn over your shoulder to see if somebody was whispering it to you, and there's nobody there. But what a great story. What a great, great story. I love your heart. This is the heart of Christ in us, to love your neighbor like you love yourself, to look at somebody who's having a hard time and to say, that could be me. And hey, that guy doesn't have a pair of shoes. You only got one shoe. What can we do to help? Not like, oh, well, too bad, tough luck, it's his problem. But what can we do to help? And so you end up helping, and it changes your life. Because now here it is.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It has totally encompassed our lives. Yeah. And I wasn't expecting, I was expecting to retire and live large.
Yeah.
And that was a very selfish thought, but I'm so much happier that, we just love this.
We do. This is our life nonstop now. So
I think God's Spirit, you were talking about the joy you got, that came from the kindness that you showed. So few Christians, I think, get to experience that, because I think for so many of us, even people maybe watching the program, say to themselves, well, I'm a believer in Jesus, and so on. And when they go to church and maybe they go to Bible study and they know scripture and the like. But I wonder how many of us would be so inclined as you were, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing, the right thing to do, would stop when we saw somebody who was homeless and say, what can I do to help? Or not even ask seeing what the need was and just filling the need. You got the shoes, you got some snacks, you got some stuff. You didn't just, you got stuff that they needed. And now you're doing that too in your van, right? You go around and you provide stuff. You were telling me a little bit earlier about you go to homeless encampments where groups of people who don't have a place to live may be gathered together, and you bring them snacks and food and all that.
We bring meals. We bring just necessities. At this time of the year, we'll be taking bug bug repellent because it's so bad. They get ticks. They get, there's lots of stuff out there. We take garbage bags.
We take Sharps containers.
We take
and
Sharps
Narcan
containers,
and,
Narcan.
We take. I think
we
I
take
should.
dog food because a lot of them have
Dogs.
and flea and tick stuff for their pets because they have pets out there and they're service animals for them.
We have a veterinary that works with us now that will go out and give rabies shots, things like that. I mean, it's we're not trying to help them live there. We're trying to build their trust and get them out of there.
Right.
And the only way you can do it is build a relationship, and that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes understanding.
And it takes a lot of grace.
A lot of grace.
Yeah, I think there are people who suppose that anybody who's in that condition got there themselves, that it's their fault, that maybe they're a drug addict. I know lots of people just assume that, oh, this person's addicted to drugs or alcohol or some other substance, and they did it to themselves, or maybe they've been incarcerated. And people have all kinds of stories, I'm guessing, right? There's all kinds of reasons why people end up in that situation. And
Absolutely.
And who said that we aren't supposed to love them? Even if they are addicted to drugs, we aren't supposed to love those people. They need stuff too. I remember a friend of mine said his father was a crack addict. And he said, but he needs to eat too. And so I give him money and I bring him food and I love him. And that's the attitude you all have, which is the right attitude, I think, for Christian people to have.
Yeah, I mean, our outreach really, we try to meet people right where they are and just supply what they need to make their lives a little bit better. And they'll, like Tad was saying, so they'll trust us the next time we come and talk to them, or if we have something more difficult to talk to them about the next time, or more involved, housing wise, they'll trust what we say. And maybe they'll take a step to get off the street. But most of these folks, there is a misperception that they are all drug addicts or all mentally ill.
Or lazy.
And
you can't be lazy living in one of those encampments. Let me tell you, that's not an easy life. It truly is not.
It's hard work.
I can only imagine that it's hard work, and I can't imagine that anybody really wants to be there. That would be their choice.
No.
So
nobody is really doing it by choice. There is a lot of mental illness on the street. There is a lot of drug addiction, but statistically, what you'll learn is that most, 2/3 of those folks were not drug addicted when they became homeless. It was the being homeless that caused the addiction, and being homeless that exacerbated whatever mental illness they may have.
We have a friend on the street who's been on the street for a long time, and he was a physician's assistant in the Air Force.
Yep.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And we just saw him last week, actually, at our last clinic. Oh. And if you want to hear strange stories, so one of our caregivers, because we have doctors on board when we go to our clinics, we get their feet looked at. In the wintertime, we see trench foot, we see frostbite, we see it all. But at this particular clinic, one of our care providers was assisting this gentleman, and they just stared at each other. And it turns out he was her primary caregiver when she was stationed in Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas, with her husband.
In 1984.
And then they meet on the streets of Erie, and she's giving him care.
Right.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. What an amazing story.
Yeah.
That I'm sure it must have been an emotional reunion for them.
It was.
It was amazing.
He's one of our regulars, and he always comes to say hello to her.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, to your point earlier, say, with so many stories, there are as many stories and as there are people on the street. I mean, there are people who are just brilliant, and people who are, like Tad was saying earlier, a gentleman that lost his wife that all just was unmoored after that and was homeless for 5 or 6 years after that. It just, the biggest thing that I think that we do, that we love and gives us so much joy, is just talking to people and listening to their stories and loving them through their
for
story.
who they are.
I think that's maybe even more powerful than a sermon, than you preaching at them. The fact that you're there with them, loving them where they are, listening to their stories, talking to them and with them, and providing their needs, which shows how much you love them and care about them, because you don't have to be there. And that's more powerful than you just stopping by once and preaching a sermon, I suppose. It's because it shows that you have the heart of Christ in you, that you're doing that. I just think it's wonderful. Does the topic of God ever come up in your conversations with people?
All the time.
Absolutely. We've given away how many Bibles?
About 2,000.
About 2,000 Bibles.
We give one. We ask, but we don't give one automatically. But we ask people if they want one, and 99% of the time
they want a Bible.
They want a Bible.
When they come on the bus, what you're seeing is the business end of the bus. This is where they get their feet washed. Our volunteers wash their feet, and then the docs come in and take a look. And when they get done from here, they'll go to the front of the bus, and that's where our shoe center is. And they sit down. We have the little stools like you'd see in a regular shoe store, and we have boots up on the racks. Typically, we know who they are before we get to a clinic. We call because they register ahead and we get their shoe size. But typically, we open it up to everybody after the first hour. So it's like a little shoe store. They get their feet washed, they get their shoes, and while they're getting their shoes, we're building up a backpack with some necessities inside. Get stuff.
So we give them a backpack, and depending on the time of year, this is there's hat and gloves and a neck warmer in there. There's a blanket. There's a foot care kit. So
nail trimmers
and wash and
then we always ask, would you like a Bible when we're putting the kits together? And 9 times out of 10, they want a Bible.
And
that's amazing.
Some
That's
of our
great.
volunteers are also very they like to pray with our guests, and so a few of them will ask every single guest, can I pray with you? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. So absolutely, God comes up.
And everybody leaves this bus with a smile on their face. We've never had any big issues on the bus that, would warrant trouble or anything like that.
No.
It's a great environment. It's full of laughs. So.
And it really does, I think, give as much to the volunteers on the bus as it does to the guests on the bus.
It really builds up your spirit after a clinic. If you're feeling down, I find that
go wash your feet.
Go wash your feet, go on a clinic, and you're going to feel great afterwards.
That's awesome. I love this. And as it is, you've given away something like 1,600 pairs of boots already, which is just awesome. I mean, it's just what a blessing. Well, it's amazing to
shout out to Carolina Shoes, really.
Yeah, shout out to Carolina Shoes in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Because they donate all of our shoes.
Right. And their shoes are the only ones we found so far that actually hold up
on the street.
What these guys put them through.
Well, it's amazing this effort only started in 2022, and now Harvest 912 is already in another state, a big one, Arizona. When we come back, I'll ask this extraordinary couple where they believe God is leading them next and how you can help.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
Harvest 912 has grown from a simple act of kindness and grace into a mission providing medical foot care, new boots, and basic necessities to hundreds of unhoused individuals, meeting a need often overlooked but essential to human dignity. Tad and Kit, tell me a little bit more about some of the ways you've seen God provide for the specific ministry needs, because you've given away all these boots, like the first pair of boots you gave away to what was that guy's name?
Florida.
His name was Florida.
Yeah.
And Florida, and the first encounter was amazing. And 9.5, 912, definitely kind of those numbers sort of pop up over and over again. But when we first were setting up the clinics in different shelters and soup kitchens around here in Erie, we went to one soup kitchen and spoke with the director right after we had met Florida. and we told her, about him, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I know Florida. He's a wonderful man. He comes here for dinner quite often." And she has this giant book, and she takes pictures of all the guests at the soup kitchen, and it's like one of those Harry Potter, like, big old book. So she got that out, and she said, "Oh, flipping through," she said, "his picture's right," and his picture was gone, and no one he was at that corner literally every time you would drive by. He's never been seen since.
And now that we know the population, and it's been years, nobody on the streets ever heard of Florida. No, I mean,
What?
yeah.
His picture's gone and nobody has seen him since?
No, and we know just about everybody on the street. We've asked, "Hey, do you know Florida?" Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The scriptures say that some of us have entertained angels unaware. You've heard that? That
Oh yeah, that's
I believe that.
that's amazing.
So we have this little, competition between us. He heard God, but I got to talk to the angels. So I guess we're up.
Yeah. That is amazing. Amazing story.
and one of the first collections we took from this church, and we went from doing the foot washing at the shelters to eventually purchasing the bus. And once we got the bus, we needed to buy podiatry tools. So the small church, they were going to take a collection, and there was maybe 50 people in the church. And they took the collection, and we got a call from the pastor that evening. Goes, "You guys have to call me now." We got a text. So we called him, and he said, "You guys are not going to believe this. We took the collection. It came out to $912 to the penny."
Wow. That is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that number pops up a lot.
It does. That's how our Missing in Community, how the encampment outreach started as well. One of our team members was out on the point in time count, which is how they count homeless folks across the country. And he had gone out to a camp, and he called me. I just told him the story about Florida, and he called me, and he was all flustered, and he said, Kit, there's three veterans in this camp, and they're all 9.5s. So that was our cue to start another.
So that's how we started Missing in Community, our veterans outreach.
Wow. What's next for you all? I mean, I know you have a ministry in Arizona, but what's next for you all?
Whatever God calls us to do.
We just try to keep up.
We just try and keep up. We're in the process of building a commercial kitchen. We purchased a building. That's where the bus, it's enclosed. We have all of our inventory. The building that we purchased, I never believed we were able to have a building this size. I just don't know how that happened, but we have it, and we're putting a commercial kitchen together so we can continue to make our freeze-dried meals, which we plan to send out to our other outreaches so they can get them out to people on the streets. We're just following his word. I mean, that's all we can do.
We don't really know exactly where harvest will take us, but we pray about it a lot, and we have lots of inquiries from around the country, honestly, to people that hear the story and would like to start a chapter, and we're happy to help folks do that. I think it's a very simple yet very powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
And,
I just love your heart. I really do. And that's the right answer is, whatever God would have us do. Well, who knows what God has planned for you if you trade in your life plans and surrender to his. What could he possibly do with you? Tad and Kit did, and hundreds of people in deep need have found hope and help because they did. We'll be right back for some closing thoughts with our great producer, Jeff Coleman. Don't go away.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
And now let's talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
When we were researching our guests, and Tad and Kit came up, and you learn what they do. I mean, there's the boots and the shoes, but the podiatry care, the connection with local pastors and shoe stores, what their act of generosity has done is created a massive network, not only in Erie, but now they have Arizona chapter, people are mimicking, I think, what they're doing and now looking at people's shoes. And the other thing, which I thought was so moving, you hear about people saying, wear the hands and feet of Jesus, or you see these images in our Bible storybooks of people washing feet, but you don't realize that this is actually happening. They're clipping toenails. They're taking people's socks off that haven't had shoes or socks, maybe for weeks or months, and then providing the level of love and dignity that a human being should be expected. So rhetoric is wonderful. When politicians talk about people living with dignity and assuming that money could solve the issue, but you still need attached to that money someone who's going to do the actual work. And if that work is not fused with a great deal of love, compassion, and understanding, it's going to come out like a vending machine, and you're going to get it wrong. So what they're doing, I think, is on both sides of this, showing human love, compassion, looking someone in the eye, hearing their story, offering hope, and then in a very tangible, practical way, being the hands and feet of Christ. That's incredible work.
Yeah, that is just, wow. Just so, that story about how they got the name Harvest 912 is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, you wonder why God does that. Sometimes you look at our life and you say, there were these signs, or there were these mileposts or little confirmations that said you're on the right path. And then the other times when you go for years and you don't see any confirmation that what you're doing is the right place. But I think they both take you to the same place, which Tad and Kit ended with, which is when you ask them what's next for you, and they said, whatever he wants us to do. It's not about the shoes, but it is. It's not about the actual act, but it's people just being willing to hear the still small voice.
Yeah.
They're heroes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every day there are reminders that we live in a world ravaged by sin and hardship of all kinds. It's confirmation nothing is actually getting better until the day comes God makes all things new. Apart from God's intervention in our lives, there really is no hope. So spending life on yourself or investing it in others is the choice we face. Tad and Kit Jakes are shining examples, not of good people doing good things, but of God's light shining through imperfect but willing people. I hope their example was as challenging to you as it was to me. Please take a minute to drop me a quick comment in the joewatkins.org line on the website. I read and respond to everyone, and I'm always encouraged. For Jeff and the entire Lighthouse TV Philly team, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks for watching. From America's first capital, where it all began 250 years ago, I'm Joe Watkins. We'll look for you next week.